All right, you're asking for it, so here it is.
Epicast.
Listen to this.
I want you fucks laughing at. We partners pod, kid. You understand? We in here drinking, singing, swinging, all that shit, dog. We sweating, getting wet, all that.
Typically, we do this with I do this with my partner Ed, and much better equipment. So we are going to get by. It's nice that this is quiet. Buzzy was like, make sure that you get it as quiet as possible. So that'll help with the editing.
It's usually pretty quiet. I had a meeting out here like 3 weeks ago because all our meeting rooms were taken up and it was snowing and there was a snow plow going by like every 45 seconds. It was loud. It was really loud in here. But I think today it's going to be pretty quiet. Those are good. Thanks for bringing those.
Yeah, no, they're yeah, I didn't come up with the recipe. I just cut up a lot of these peppers, and I rely on people that are much smarter than me to make them taste good.
I like pickled anything.
Yeah, pickling. I mean, it does some things, man. I'm a fan. All right, so this is kind of cool. So we're in Maine. Special drinking partners featuring Rob Todd of Allagash Brewing here in Portland, Maine. If you're listening to the cast, you're wondering where Ed is. He's probably at work right now. He actually has a real job, which allows him a very nice lifestyle, much better than mine. But I do get to sit down every once in a while with some cool people in some strange lands, and we are currently in Portland. It's a actual port land, like it's Portland. I didn't realize it was a port land until like I was like on the street, like driving in and saw like a huge tanker.
There's the bay right there.
Like there's a tanker like sitting next to the like wow, there's like a huge ass tanker. You don't. It's crazy.
If you come back in the summer, we'll go out on the water.
Yeah,
pull up some lobster traps.
Yeah.
Like, it's beautiful out there. It's nice.
Like it's a Portland. It smells like lobster, it's this slight scent of seafood everywhere you go, but it's like not like a bad seafood. It's like an amazing I wonder what's cooking in that kitchen over there type seafood. It's always around, and thus far the food has been amazing, the beer has been amazing, the people have been amazing, and we are here now with Rob Todd, who is hailed as one of the beer gods of this craft industry. Those weren't my words; those were the words of everybody else that I talked to before I got to this place, and we're here to, I guess, get to know him a bit and ask him some of the questions that maybe somebody else hasn't asked him in the 1,000 interviews I'm sure that he's had. So those will be a little different from the regular format, but I'm gonna get into this, and so that you can get sick of hearing my voice. I'm sure you do. But if you're looking for us, you can find us on epicastnetwork.com/partnerspot. You can find us on iTunes, Stitcher, Libsyn, Google Play, and Spotify under Drinking Partners. You can find us on IG, Twitter, and Facebook at PartnerSpot. All right, well, we're here.
We should probably open a beer.
We should
too,
open a beer.
Right?
Far too sober for this.
I think we can do something about that.
Nice.
I still have to figure out how to open these 12 packs.
Yeah.
Efficiently.
Were you not in the marketing department when that whole thing? Is
I
that a
wasn't.
marketing department thing? Is that what department handles the beer perforation?
It's like everything around here. It's a team effort.
Yeah.
I'm sure, like this design, which I love, it works pretty well.
I just need to out again. Yeah, I mean,
it's like self-dispensing.
Yeah.
They don't flow out after you grab one. But everything's a team effort. So I guarantee you, like all of these design features, like what kind of handle, what kind of dispenser, design, everything would have involved the brewing department, the mechanical department, because the mechanical department's got to buy the machines to make this and run the machines. Mm-hmm. Obviously, the marketing department, sales department's got to sell it. So it ends up being a team effort. And I'm all fired up about these. I mean, we've been excited about cans for a while. And there's something that I'm particularly excited about just with 12 packs.
Yeah. I mean, well, it's kind of crazy. Like it feels like craft beer is coming back into, like beer. Like, it's not to be like, want to like, oh man, make beer, like taste like beer or whatever. But like, you had the hoppy phase and you have, all the pastry stouts and you have all, whatever. And it seems like folks are like, all right, well, and the big, crowlers and growlers and, things of that nature. And like, I mean, it's something to be said about having a nice, like, wit in a 12-ounce can. I mean, like, it's not a pounder. It's not, blueberry chocolate, fly covered, pastry stouts. It's a good solid wit in a 12-ounce can. I mean, so I guess tell us a little bit about what you've seen in your journey and like some of the trends, and how you continue to be relevant in this environment that's always looking for something new.
Well, I like your point about just the drinkability of this beer, and I agree with you that people are definitely gravitating towards drinkable beers. And it's funny because when I started building the brewery back in the summer of 94, finished the brewery in the summer of 95. I'm sure you saw the original space.
I saw that you pieced that together with your bare hands.
Exactly. Like cut the drainage trenches in the floor, jackhammered it, welding, plumbing.
This?
So I started this just about 3 years out of college. So I spent 2 years out in Colorado, mostly working construction jobs, but some back of the house restaurant jobs too.
Mm.
And then I completely stumbled into the beer business, getting a job washing kegs at Otter Creek Brewing in Middlebury, Vermont.
That's great. Otter Creek was the first sponsor for one of our comedy shows.
Really?
Yeah, Otter Creek. Yeah,
they got a special place in my heart because that's where I learned the trade. But summer jobs in high school and college were mostly like construction type jobs, like working with my hands. And ever since I was a little kid, like one of the only times I could focus is when something in the house broke, like the vacuum cleaner, hair dryer, lawnmower, whatever. I'd like dive into it and take it apart and like figure out how it works. So I've like always liked mechanical stuff, figuring out how stuff works. So I was excited about building the brewery on my own. And I also felt like if I brewed it on my own, rather than just going out and getting a consultant who'd maybe stamped out 50 other breweries, it would be a more unique brewery. Mm. But it was really important to me, if I figured I was going to be going to all that work building it, like cobbling together all these old dairy tanks, and then hopefully my life running it, I didn't see the point in making something people could already get. There were a lot of great beers being brewed at the time, like in the British style, German styles. Some of the Pacific Northwest, like pale ales and IPAs, were making their way in. I didn't want to make something people could already get because I didn't really see the point in going to all that trouble. And I looked at the Belgian brewing tradition as an opportunity to give people like a really unique experience with beer.
What is it about the Belgian beer that I mean? Because like personally, from somebody that doesn't know shit about beer, like. I came into it with like, Belgian whites and things of that nature. I got into a bunch of other different beers, but then like I started trying to like drink Belgians again, like the whites or whatever. And they were like a Heffies and things of that. And it was like the banana and like the coriander was just so much, like it was just a whole lot. And it was just like, I can't, what I mean? But like with this, you don't get like, it's there, but it's not like in your face, banana and spice, like, like it's like, hey, we're here for the party, like we're not going to take up too much of your time. Just wanted to like, say congratulations and then we're out,
Exactly. And I mean, the Belgian brewing tradition in general, I looked at it as an opportunity to give people like an unlimited experience with beers because the Belgians pretty much, for a bunch of reasons, use almost everything in their beer. Like to your point, spices, fruits, lots of cool yeast strains and bacterias, lots of unique processes that involve oak aging. So for a pretty tiny country, the brewing traditions are like vastly different. And so I looked at it, like I said, as an opportunity to give people these unlimited experiences. And I was really intrigued by this style, the Belgian style wheat beer. The main reason being for what you just pointed out. This beer, to me, if it's brewed right and brewed with the traditional yeast strain and subtly spiced, it's a very, very like drinkable, sessionable beer, but there's a lot going on with it. And I struggle with beers where you have one flavor that like completely overwhelms the beer. Like whether it's like really malty sweet or whether you have a spice that's like completely in your face or like overly fruited or really, really bitter. I prefer beers that are like balanced and complex because they're just more interesting beers. You can't figure them out after one or two sips or even one or two beers. They keep you guessing.
It's a flavor roller coaster. It's a ride. You know what I mean? Like, you get something in the beginning, you get something in the middle, you get something at the end, and then as it warms, it changes. So that's a good question, and I said that's a good question, as if I'm patting myself on the back for thinking of it. But like when you brew, how do you brew like knowing that it's going to warm? Like, I mean, is that something that you take into consideration? Like this beer can only be drank at this temperature, or it should be, like, is that something that you think about? Like, or is that something that in the brewing or whatever, that's a process? Or
we definitely think about how the beer is going to be served. This beer, like my preference is to serve it cold. I like this beer served cold. I think it's crisper. It's more refreshing. Some of our beers though, like the triple, I don't feel like they express themselves as much when they're really, really cold. So I prefer that one at like cellar temperature. And when we're brewing the beer, we absolutely think of how we're going to present it. Like the glassware, it all kind of works together. Like the glassware it's going to be presented in, the temperature it's going to be presented. So we absolutely think about those things. Yeah. And it's funny, like when I first came out with this beer, I used to pour this into, I wanted to give people a unique experience. I'd walk into bars and it's unfiltered. It's got that like kind of nice veil to it, like straw colored veil. And I'd pour it into a glass and people hadn't seen cloudy beers back then. And they'd be like, what's wrong with this? Why does it look like this? And they taste it like, why does it taste like this? And it's funny because they had the exact opposite reaction that you had and that I have with this beer. Because I look at this as being like refreshing, sessionable, balanced. At the time, I got told over and over again by other brewers, distributors, retailers, like, it was just so weird for them. They'd be like, why don't you brew something sessionable? Why don't you brew something you can do some volume with instead of this like, weird Belgian style white beer? And I was like, I was pulling my hair out. I was like, this is like refreshing. It is sessionable. But it literally took people a decade to discover it. Literally.
Wow. Well, they say it takes 10 years to be an overnight success.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
that's our story.
Yeah. So I want to get into the story of, like how you came to, being all that or whatever. But what is it like living in Portland and not being able to eat lobster?
Yeah, like I said, I'm allergic to lobster.
Like you're in Portland. Like, so you came to Portland. You came to Portland. Like, did you know that you were allergic to lobster when you came to Portland? So you came to Portland loving lobster. I would assume that you loved lobster.
So I grew up outside of Boston. Yeah. I loved lobster. I ate it when I was a kid.
How did you grow up in Boston and don't have that accent? Where the hell did that go?
Because my mom's from L.A. and my dad's from Schenectady, New York.
Schenectady.
So,
that's a real New York because you can barely pronounce it. Schenectady. I can't spell that shit.
Yeah.
So upstate.
Yeah. So I did not grow up with a Boston accent. Yeah. I've probably ended up, every once in a while, people tell me I've got like a little bit of a New England accent. I don't notice it. But I grew up in Boston, ate lobster when I was a kid. And it was funny because when I was building the brewery, I was drinking a fair amount of beer. And even when I got it going, I had a lot of beer to trade. Mm-hmm. And there was a couple buddies of mine who were lobstermen. And I would trade them beer. They helped me stand my first two tanks. Just, I didn't have riggers come in and do it. I just like hooked block and tackles and chain falls to the ceiling and like crossed my fingers. Yeah. And, and I was trading beer for lobster, and I don't know if I ate too much lobster because it was free. But literally, I ate it like the first 2 or 3 years of being in Portland, and then I was literally eating it one week and fine, eating it the next week, not fine. Wow. But as long as I don't get allergic to beer, you're all good. Yeah. I can live with it.
Yeah. It's such ingrained in the like the community here. The industry and again, even the smell, everything. Like it's so totally lobster and like you. and this brewery is so ingrained in the whole thing or whatever. And the fact that like your stomach doesn't get along is such a like. So do you find yourself often in situations where people are like stuffing like lobster in your face and you're like, it's okay, I can't, like
constantly. But it is funny because our brand, like Maine, is such a huge part of our brand, and that's why I chose the Allagash name. I never thought we'd even sell beer outside of Maine. I just thought we'd be, when I retired, I'd have like 4 or 5 employees and we'd just be selling beer in Maine. And I really wanted a name that like resonated with Mainers. And I wanted this brewery to be all about Maine. And, obviously lobsters, it's a big part of Maine. It's a big part of what we talk about. And whenever we have friends that come into town, we give them the Maine/lobster experience. So it's pretty weird.
Like he's all right. He doesn't eat lobster.
Yeah.
He seems like an all right guy.
I'm like the only one at the table that's not eating it. And everyone else comes in and they'll eat like 3 lobster rolls in one sitting.
You should have like a shirt or like a tag or something that says like lobster insolvent or something.
Wear one like a medical bracelet.
Yeah, a little
like
medical bracelet.
And I am still allergic to it because I've accidentally eaten it a couple times in the last 10 years.
And it just so every once in a while, it's just a reminder, like still not cool.
Yep.
So you said you were looking at distributing outside of Maine, and that's the thing it's crazy because you started in when there were, 300 breweries, maybe in America. Now there's over 8,000. I got into, drinking craft beer. I was able to afford craft beer about 6 years ago. And at that time in Pittsburgh, it started to boom really, well. And everybody was like, that was the goal, was to like get a little spot, little hole in the wall, something, brew enough to get a name and then expand and then eventually distribute. Like that's the thing. That's the goal. That's where you make, distribute and go all over the place or whatever. And like, it seems now that, folks are starting to look at more of a German type model where it's like, every little town has their brewery and you get your beer there. And if you're not there, then you just don't get that beer or whatever. So like, what has it been like, going through that? Starting out small, not expecting to really expand beyond Maine, expanding, across the country. And then now in the market now where so many people are looking to kind of pull back that, how has that been?
Yeah, I've seen a fair number of years in this business. I can't believe it. We're about to hit our 25th year here, and I got into the business before that in 93. So I've been doing this for, 27 years. And obviously, there's people who've been doing it a lot longer than I have, like the real pioneers, like D.L. Geary that started around the corner, and Jim Cook and Ken Grossman, Larry Bell. So, there's been people doing it longer than I have for sure, but as I look back, I've been doing this for a little while.
You've been here for a minute. You have some employees that weren't born when you opened up.
Yeah, totally.
So that's a stay.
But, back when I started, there were basically 2 models. There was a brew pub model where you served all your beer directly to the customer and you had a restaurant attached. And then there was like the distribution model. And I'm oversimplifying it a little bit, but those were your basic choices. And we went with the distribution model. We started right here in this industrial park, right around the corner. And, unfortunately, back then, people weren't pouring into industrial parks and paying $15 for a 4-pack. Like you had to sell your beer to a distributor. People wouldn't even pay more than like $7 for a 6-pack back then. So we were literally like making pennies a case. And in order to survive back then in that climate, you had to do volume. So a lot of them, this place obviously looks a lot different than it did 20 or so years ago with the big tanks. A lot of that is just by necessity. When I started, I mentioned with the Allagash White, I couldn't give this stuff away. The growth was like painfully slow and we couldn't make enough money to survive. And definitely in Maine, which, oddly enough, in some ways was really progressive from like a culinary and beer perspective, but in a lot of ways, not as progressive as like a Boston or a New York or a Chicago. So I couldn't sell enough beer to survive in Maine. So I just started opening up as many states as I could. And over the first 10 years, which is where our growth was really slow, from just me as an employee for the first year to like 10 employees after 4 employees after 10 years. I just opened up all these markets, and we literally ended up selling beer in 30 states.
4 employees after 10 years?
4 employees after 10 years, and we were selling beer in 30 states, which...
Who was making, like, how do you make that much beer for 4 people?
Dude, we were
Somebody got to answer the phones.
We were stretched.
Did y'all not take phone calls?
We were stretched thin. I had no reps. We had some brokers in markets, but I mean, I was all over the country. You know, our brewing team was working their ass off. Like, everything was manual by hand. But we weren't selling a ton of volume, but we were a mile wide and an inch deep. And like, frankly, we weren't doing a good job anywhere. I was very happy with our quality as the beer left the brewery, as happy as you can be with brewing on a bunch of dairy equipment, but we weren't supporting our distributors.
You got to keep in mind that you welded a bunch of dairy equipment together.
Yeah, exactly. It wasn't exactly. Yeah. Exactly.
And then you got 4 employees to cover 30 states. Like, it's, yeah.
It was crazy. And when the beer finally did get traction, like I said, after a decade, I kind of stepped back and I was like, I'm not going to feel good about doing a shitty job everywhere. We want to do a very, very best of class job everywhere. And we pulled out of 12 states over a 4-year period and really worked towards like going deep in markets that we felt like we were relevant in. And a lot of it is basically East Coast, Maine to Georgia, Chicagoland, and the southern 2/3 of California. And we tend to do really well in urban areas like Boston, New York, Philly, DC, Chicago, LA, San Francisco. That's where the beer just has really resonated and taken off. And luckily, it really started to get traction really all through New England, definitely in Maine and then all through New England.
What did you tell yourself? What did people tell? Like, what is it that gets you through to this? So like, you brew this beer and you take it around to people and they're like, the fuck is this? But you persisted. Why? Like, I mean, if you're a band and you're in a basement or some shit like that, or, you played a couple of shows and people are like, you fucking suck. After a while, you stop playing. Like, why did you keep brewing this even though people were like, I'm not, because that's the thing, it to be good, like, so like we always talk about parallels in art and entertainment and with comedy or whatever. It's like, like I know what a good joke is. I listen to jokes, I create jokes, like I know what a good joke is, and like a lot of shit that people enjoy is not good humor. I mean, now, what is good humor? Yeah, you can go in like, what is that and the whole whatever, but like right? Subjective and all that or whatever. Yeah. But quantify, like there's certain elements in a joke. I mean, the setup, the punchline, the delivery, the timing. There are very things that you can kind of like gauge what good is. And just because I believe it's a good joke doesn't mean everybody else is. And like I've actually had to like and a lot of comedians have to like alter their routines because the masses don't want the good shit. They want maybe something like that. So like, what is it that you told yourself in this process? Because like, at least with jokes, I'm just writing that shit and performing it on stage. Mm-hmm. You welded like dairy equipment together, and like there's real like that product costs money. My jokes cost time, and it's a hypothetical money, but like you actually have to buy malts and grains and things of that nature, or whatever. So like you have this large investment in a product that people are saying, I don't want, and yet you persist. Why?
A bunch of things. Number one, I believed in it, which, you kind of made reference to. But also I'm bullheaded. Like, until someone stops me, like, I'm not going to stop. I'm just going to keep charging. Until someone like literally like physically stops me, I'm going to keep going. And I guess I was just in that mind frame, I was working pretty much 7 days a week, like for 10 years. Mm-hmm. And it was a grind, and there was definitely like tough not so uplifting times. And it's interesting, this analogy with the jokes, because I think I mentioned, and I can't tell you how many times brewers, retailers, and distributors were basically telling me to do that. Like, change this joke you believe in.
It's not funny anymore. Try different jokes.
Yeah, but I didn't listen to them. I just kind of kept pushing on and doing it the way we wanted to do it. And I don't know whether it was just strictly a timing thing or whether it was just working away for 10 years or, what it was, probably a mix of a bunch of things. It finally got some traction.
When did you start to feel when was kind of one of those moments when you were like, this is going to be some shit. Because it's Allagash White. It's now it's in those hollows, the Hall of Fame or whatever. When did you start to feel like this is going to be that thing?
It's 2006. And it was a pretty, I don't know why, but kind of maybe just because the growth popped and people actually wanted it. People were drinking it faster than we could make it for the first time. We'd walk up to the cooler and I'd be like, oh, well, the cooler's empty. Yeah. After 10 years of walking into the cooler and saying shit, what are we going to do about all this beer that's been sitting here for 2 months?
Yeah.
So it was pretty abrupt in 2006. And we were in our original facility from, when I started building in 94 to early 2007. But during 2006, we started to feel it pop, and we very quickly outgrew that original facility. And that's when we built our core facility here. We've always been really incremental though, and cautious. I don't know, some people might say overly cautious, but when we built our what is now the core of our new facility back in 2007, we didn't build a brand new building and then put a brand new brew house in, brand new bottling line, tons of brand new fermenters. We moved all of that old equipment over into the new facility just so we wouldn't put ourselves in a situation where we'd be screwed if we didn't grow 50% the next 2 years. So we moved all that old, basically junky dairy equipment over into the new facility. We had our original mashed lauter tun. It was an old dairy tank, and we brewed every single batch of Allagash White on that, and every one of our other beers for 18 years on that old, dented, beat up dairy tank. Luckily now we have a completely automated system where the quality is
it seems much easier,
tenfold better. It's a lot easier, uses less energy and resources.
So how do you being bullheaded and having visions and being somebody that, especially when you have success and growth, and you have a track record of that, how do you temper yourself? How do you build a team around you and know when to be all right, maybe I don't know, because that's part of being a leader. A good leader is saying, I don't fucking know, and letting go. But that's hard to do when you are so attached and you have a record of success.
Yeah, I think 10 years of basically just struggling and fighting, basically pushing into the headwinds, it kind of does really bake into our culture. Don't take huge risks. Don't take success for granted. Do everything you can to be as disciplined as possible, because it's not always easy. There was an easy time in the whole industry, and this is when we grew. We're subject to market forces for sure, just like any brewery is, with very few exceptions. But, when things really did take off from 2006 to 2016, we didn't take that volume growth for granted. And with every passing day through that period, I was always thinking, I don't want to go back to where we were 10 years ago. So we're just going to be cautious. We're not going to go crazy opening up new states just because distributors are knocking on our door, or go crazy with 50% expansions in 1 year. We've just always tried to be disciplined, cautious, but not overly cautious. and we've never tried to like take these big bites or leaps.
Yeah.
And it served us well going into what is, now, especially for regional breweries, there's a lot of headwinds in the industry.
Yeah, I mean, like, I've tried to model my own career off of incremental growth, and that same thing. I had a mentor, Aaron Clyrey, said, don't ever take a gig that you're not ready for. I mean, you'll never get that opportunity again. I mean, so, I get that. I guess my more question is, like, who is your handler? I mean, like, you are the head of the company. I mean, you founded this, you literally built it with your bare hands. So like, where, like, how do you cultivate an environment that keeps you sane? I mean, and not an environment that is presenting, the king's new clothes. I mean, like, where you have people that will say, like, look, like, maybe this ain't it. I mean, like, like, how do you do that? Because again, it's hard when you have all the power. Really, I mean, you can, given what you have. Like, how do you stay sane and say, you know what, I'm going to listen to them, or whatever. How do you build that team, and how do you like maintain that?
I am really, really lucky here. Like, the crew, this whole crew at the brewery is like, and you've probably seen this walking around, hopefully, just everyone's like so passionate and engaged and sharp, and they believe in what they're doing and what we're doing here. We literally don't have anyone here, or at least we don't for long, if there is anyone here, that's in this bucket. We don't have anyone that just like shows up for work, punches in, does the minimum, and punches out. Like, everyone's super engaged. Like, for our innovation program, it's not just me and Jason, our brewmaster, that are innovating. We open the door to all 150 employees at the company. If anyone has an idea for a beer, whether they're working in our Warren Ave warehouse or guest relations or the accounting department, if anyone has an idea for a beer, they can brew it on that little 10-gallon system.
I saw that. That's fucking phenomenal, man.
And we run that. We'll brew 100 batches on that this year. Like, we were running it today.
Yeah.
And
I had some of it in the break room. Some of that came off.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
exactly. We have those 2 taps.
Yeah, there's a tap on there from the pallet system that you can just kind of like come in and just have one of the test batches. That, I mean, it.
Yep, employees can try it, comment on it. So, to answer your question, I listen to the crew here. I mean, this is a sharp crew, and honestly, the crew that reports to me and everyone in this brewery, they're a lot smarter than I am with what they're doing, and a lot better at what they're doing than I ever was.
But how do you cultivate that environment? I mean, because like, there's a lot of talented individuals who are surrounded by lesser than talented individuals, or can't, like, they're really good at the art side of it, but can't really build a culture or an environment around it or whatever. Like, what do you believe, if I'm a young, like, brewer or whatever, and I'm trying to, like, and I'm starting to see some success, and I want to build a team around me or whatever, what are some of the things, like, whenever it went from 4 to now 150,
yeah,
I'm sure you were there every step of that process.
Oh, yeah.
What were some of the things that, like, that you kind of like, there's some of your core tenements to say, hey, this is what we need in an employee or whatever, or in an environment?
We hire passionate people who believe in what we're doing. And that might not necessarily specifically be like drinking beer or even making beer. I mean, they might believe in some of the things that are important to us, like the community. We want to hopefully be a very positive contributor to this community. We have a philanthropy program. Last year, we gave about $375,000 back to the local community. So it might be like community that they're like really passionate about, that we do at the company that we're passionate about, or it might be something with our sustainability, or it might be something with the beer. It might be something just with the way we treat our employees. So treat people with respect. Listen to them, and hopefully there's something about what we do, even if it's just beyond making the beer, that people are really, passionate about and that resonates with them. And we spend a lot of time on leadership. I'm just a huge believer in people. I mean, if you go around here now, there's a lot of what we do now, especially opposed to 20 years ago, that's like completely automated. I mean, that brew house is automated, but that brew house does not work unless someone who really knows their shit is running it. And you'll even see the brewer up there. They're just like constantly engaged, like looking in the tanks. Is the system doing what it should be doing? I thought that was
weird that there was the brewers were so attentive on a system that produces consistency year in year. Like, yeah, I mean, on that scale, it was like, God damn, like. It was weird. I was like, don't you just kind of like know that it's gonna do that? But like he was back and forth, just like back and forth checking shit. I mean, like,
yeah. To me, like just business in general is all about like is people and the leadership, not just my leadership, but anyone who's leading anyone here. And, you know, one of the things I'm really excited about is B Corp. I don't know if you've chatted with anyone here. And, you know, B Corp, basically a third party, it's almost like a LEED certification on a building where a third party comes in and says that building was built responsibly.
Oh, yeah, the B Corp. I've heard of this organization. It kind of like, I mean, for the folks that are, was it environmentally, like, I mean, sound and whatnot?
Exactly. So basically, with B Corp, if you earn this certification, a third party has come in, B Labs has come in and said, not only are you considering your shareholders in your decision-making process, but you're considering your employees, you're considering the community, and you're considering the environment. So sustainability. I really believe like the better we do on all those fronts, not only is it like the right thing to do, but it's like a good business decision. There are business reasons to do it. And I feel like if we do better on those fronts, we're going to be doing more good and we're going to be selling more beer and growing in a healthy way.
So, I mean,
and of course the people and our employees, how we treat our employees, it's a very important part of that B Corp movement.
So, I mean, like, so what are, you know, like what are some of the advantages? Because, you know, from my understanding, you know, everybody's making, you know, a living wage. I met people who started out, you know, wiping tanks that are now like, you know, heading labs and like, you know, there's promotion from within. And, you know,
here at Allagash or in
here
the
at
industry.
Allagash. Yeah. I mean, like, you know, like, and it's one of the things that I have seen a lot in more established breweries. And it seems like kind of a culture industry. I mean, culture or whatever, like, you know, a lot of people, you know, are like, it's a welcoming industry. I don't know if the beer helps at all, but like, it seems like an industry that kind of cares more about, you know, humanity than other industries. I mean, craft being by name and nature smaller, you know what I mean, and local, but I did see, you know, here specifically, you know, like people that were, you know, started out part-time and now have full-time jobs and, you know, are able to support their families and things of that nature. And everybody is, you know, seemed to be, you know, excited. And you could tell when you walk into a place, like if the employees care at all. You know what I mean? If they're being treated right. Like, if you ever had bad customer service, that server probably wasn't getting paid well. You know what I mean? You know, so, you know, I guess what are some of the advantages that you found in treating your employees, you know, well and with respect? And what, I guess, what are some of the hurdles, you know, like in doing so that like, you know, other industries, other breweries or whatever, may face and how they can overcome them?
Well, I mean, that's a big question.
It is. That's how we do it once the beer starts flowing.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And, you know, one observation just on before I get to Allagash specifically on craft beer as a whole, on those fronts that you mentioned, I feel like craft beer has delivered a lot of value and can continue to deliver more value in different ways as the industry matures. But, you know, craft beer, like a lot of things in our lives, like making shoes, like textiles, light manufacturing, farming, beer, it all got like stripped out of communities and commoditized. And like along with that, all this value gets pulled out of communities. And beer has been this like really unique example of an industry that's like been re-delivered to communities. And, you know, luckily we as small brewers, and I would still obviously even compared to like one of the big breweries, even though we look big, we're a tiny little brewery, and all us little breweries are pretty inefficient compared to the big guys. So it means like tons of jobs.
I know a lot of brewers that would disagree that this is a tiny operation. But
Compared to the really big ones, it is. Yeah, I never imagined we'd get to this size. But I mean, gathering places like you probably saw yesterday, which was even a slow day. It's cool. Like people come and gather here, hopefully put their phones away and actually like engage and talk. And breweries are very philanthropic. But it's a good question. Like, why are these breweries like? Is there something about the DNA of people who are starting brewers that really consider community really, really important, or is it just the fact that a business has moved back to the community? It's like it's doing so much good in the community. Probably it's a lot of both of those things. I mean, those are the things that like make me feel really good. Like if we're growing 30% a year versus 20% a year versus 4% a year, obviously there's like financial implications and a lot of implications to that growth. But the growth rate just for the sake of growth doesn't inspire me a whole lot. Like I don't care if we just crossed the 100,000 barrel threshold, and that's cool. It's like a big number and it deserves like cracking a beer, but like volume just for the sake of volume doesn't inspire me. Like it really inspires me if I come into work and everyone's like passionate and engaged and has a smile on their face and wants to be there. It like really inspires me if we can write a check to the Pediatric Nurse Scholarship Fund at Maine Med for $25,000 for pediatric nurses to like further their education. Or if we can help with food insecurity for the community in Portland or for the immigrant community in Portland. Like those are the things that inspire me, or food insecurity in the school that's right down the road. Though I get excited about that shit. Like it's fun. And the bigger we get, the more good I feel like we can do. And I feel like the vast majority of brewers, like people in this business, like share that sentiment. Does that? I don't even remember what your original question. I start to get.
It does. Yeah, no, that's how we really be drinking on Drinking Partners. If anybody is wondering. But what are some of the advantages that you've seen from having a well-fed workforce?
People stay here. I mean, our brewmaster, you mentioned people start like scrubbing tanks here. Our brewmaster, Jason's been here for 21 years, and he literally started part-time scrubbing tanks. I mean, there's nothing he tells anyone in the brewery to do that he hasn't done himself, usually the hard way. And I'm in the same boat.
Was he one of the 4 employees?
He was, absolutely, yeah. Wow. He started, I think, in 98, either 97 or 98. I had like 2 employees at the time. He's been with us ever since, and I'll tell you what, the brewing is in way better hands with him than it was with me. He's a sharp guy.
I did not realize wiping tanks was that important of a job in the brewer industry. But I mean, if you're out there and you're thinking about starting a brewery, make sure that in your first 4 fucking employee hires, you get a goddamn tank wipe. I mean,
and you're willing to wipe tanks yourself.
Exactly.
They say at brewing school, like literally like a third of the production hours is cleaning.
Yeah.
I mean, you're like constantly cleaning.
Oh, I mean, you're working with live like organisms and shit.
Yeah.
I mean, there's it's a like beer. It's a lot of shit. It's food. It's live shit. You know what I mean? You gotta clean that shit up.
I notice right when I walk in another brewery, like, is this brewery being well run? Is it not being well run from a quality standpoint? Because just the cleanliness directly reflects on that. Because if you're not taking care of it from like a cleanliness perspective, then there's probably a whole lot of other things you're not.
Well, you can't be consistent if it's not clean, right? You know what I mean? You're just introducing all kind of wild shit and like, you know what I mean? Like little problems here and there.
Exactly. But it is a fun business. I've had a blast. I can't believe like 25 years this summer for us. Like in some ways it seems like a lifetime. In some ways it's like, where did the last 25 years go? But it's fun. It's been an amazing ride, and it's cool to see how much things have evolved here and in the industry as a whole, with welcoming new drinkers to the craft scene. Everything craft is given to the community. It's been a pretty amazing experience. like to your point, when we started chatting, yeah, there was like 300 breweries in the entire country when I started. And I actually thought I was too late. Like, geez, because it was only 10 years prior to that, there was 50 brewers in the country. Yeah. So I was like, I'm too fucking late. Yeah. There's already 300 breweries. And now, I would have told you were crazy if you said there'll be 2,000 brewers in 25 years. And here we are with like 8,000 brewers.
I was speaking with a brewer out in Three Weavers.
Who? Lynn?
Alexandra.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I know Lynn Weaver.
Yeah, the Lynn Weaver is
the
owner.
Yeah.
Alexandra is the founding brewer.
Okay.
And I asked her, I was like, I asked her about the, she said there's like 1,000 breweries in California, and like, how like, and I was like, well, are there too many breweries? Like, can you still get in? And she had said, something along the lines of like, there's a lot of people out here resting on their laurels, and they're not going to be around forever. So we're going to need new folks. So like, is that something that you've seen yourself in the industry, in the area? And how do you yourself prevent yourself from resting on your laurels and being like, well, fuck, we're Allagash white, motherfucker. You know what I mean?
Like I said, we don't take any draft line, any placement for granted. Like if I see someone out in the trade drinking our beer, I'm buying them the beer. Like if someone, just because again, I went through 10 years of no one drinking the beer, and still like it means a lot to me if someone like has faith in us and supports us and orders a beer. So, I do not take it for granted. Things are really competitive right now. And we feel it as this size brewery kind of from both sides, because you have like the big massive breweries snapping up all these craft breweries everywhere, not writing anywhere on the package that they're owned by AB InBev or Miller Coors. So the customer doesn't know. And they've obviously got like advantages that we could never dream of, like access to retail, leverage with the wholesalers, access to raw materials. You name it, they've got it. And on the other hand, we're competing with those 1,000, like even in California, we're competing with those 1,000 brewers. And, if one brewery opens up and takes one of our tap lines, we notice it. I mean, you notice any tap line, but it's really not that big a deal. When 1,000 breweries open up and each take a tap line, like that's a big deal, Yeah. So it's competitive, and you got to have your shit together. Like if you're a regional brewery, especially a family owned regional brewery like us, like we don't have the muscle of private equity behind us. We don't have the muscle of being even like partially owned by one of the big brewers. So we've got to have our shit together. And like everyone here knows that. Yeah. And on the other hand, like that's really exciting to not be owned by one of the big brewers or to not have private equity in here, because we do things the way we want to do them. Yeah. And we focus on the stuff that we're passionate about and that we care about, like our philanthropy program, like hopefully very robust employee benefits, hopefully, and we're an industry leader with sustainability. It's kind of a non-glamorous award, but the city just brought us a plaque for the Industrial Pre-Treatment Award for 2019.
Industrial Pre-Treatment, how does that work?
For the sewer department. So they've got to treat all the effluent for the city, and we obviously work very closely with them because we're a pretty big manufacturer and we use a lot of water. Yeah. And they basically came in and said, like, you guys, we're recognizing you guys as the most responsible industrial member of this community for your effluent in 2019. And again, doesn't sound like too glamorous, right? But to me, I'm like that. I'm passionate about that. Like, that's cool. That means we're being hopefully a positive contributor to this community.
I mean, I don't think it sounds glamorous to some folks, but I mean, I think, what you're saying and what you're hitting on is the demographic that you're looking for. You're looking for the demographic that understands that, that is important. I mean, these corporations and all that, it's not like, it's not like the EPA has expanded its regulations over the last couple of years. So, it's up to private organizations to have, and again, I was having a conversation with your HR department, and it was like, it's not like you don't have to do these things. You know what I mean? It's not like the government is coming in and going, yo, like, check these boxes. A lot of what you're doing is by choice, and you're seeing the benefit of those choices. You know what I mean? And that's the thing that I've been kind of curious as to, like how others can follow suit. You know what I mean? Like, in the beer industry and others. So I guess if you have two questions. One, if you have any advice on how, say, brewers or organizations can be a bit more understanding of the environment. And then two, what advice would you give, new brewers, coming into the market? Because it's not like brewers, like are going to stop. It's not like you're going to be the last brewer. Jason's not going to be the last brewer. There's going to be newer brewers, there's going to be younger brewers, and they're going to have a hankering for, opening up or whatnot. And like, they're opening up in a completely different market and environment. So, like, what would you offer to them?
I mean, like, to echo your point that you make right before asking the question, those are all things like the community and the environment, employees. Those are things that I'm just like personally passionate about, and they're the right thing to do. And I honestly believe, and this I think kind of answers your question, there's like a business case for doing those things. I mean, if you treat your employees better, you're going to have more loyalty, right? It's an investment, but you're going to have more loyalty. So right thing to do, business case. If you're more sustainable, it's the right thing to do. And there's a business case in many, many situations. I mean, I've seen it over and over again here. We'll become more sustainable. Say we'll find somewhere for a waste stream to go rather than the landfill, and we end up saving a couple bucks. I mean, it may not be like a couple $100,000, but maybe it's $500 a year. Well, if you can do the right thing and save $500 a year,
and you could make money by doing the right thing.
Yeah.
What?
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, it's like inclusivity in the industry, right? If more people feel welcome here and more welcome to the craft beer movement, we can sell more beer. So
it's like, you're giving more opportunities and you're selling more beer. And it's like, everybody seems to be happy. And it seems to be the right thing.
It's like the right thing to do. And there's a business case for it. Like, you might as well do it. So we try to find, there's intersections like that all over the map. So, that's one thing I would encourage. And I think that's something that craft brewers can like relate to. It's work. And like it takes focus and bandwidth, but it's gratifying.
You're a bunch of engineers. Like most,
a ton of them. Yeah.
Yeah. Most brewers are chefs and engineers, and you're problem solvers. So it feels like another problem that, like, that's what you guys enjoy doing. I mean, like, it's engineering. You got to take malt and barley and shit and turn it into something drinkable. I mean, there's a lot of processes and problems that go into that whole thing, and you figured it the fuck out, and you figured it out so well, and then efficiency and then consistency that, like, something like that, it seems like a brewer's challenge almost. You know what I mean?
It is. Yeah. I mean, and it's funny, just I was like, in the early days, despite all the headwinds, I think because it was such a struggle, I was like super, super like engaged, and I knew what my job was, and I was focused. Then when the industry was growing like crazy, I kind of had my arms around the job, but it was more simple, like, just get the beer on the truck, like, don't short the distributors. Now that there's so many headwinds in the industry, I'm kind of like relishing the challenge. Like, how do we continue to stay relevant? How do we grow? Like, how do we bring more people into this movement so we can sell more beer? And then with our scale too, we're able to, make a ton of strides towards like sustainability. Employee benefits, give more through our philanthropy program than we could have when we were 3,000 or 4,000 barrels. So it's like exciting to me, the prospects.
We could keep talking for 3 more hours, but we shouldn't. Buzzy is going to kill me. We've gone over already. But I do appreciate you having me here and the conversation. Before we go though, I do have to ask, what is your favorite form of potato?
French fries.
French fries?
Yeah.
What kind of fry?
Actually, I'm gonna re-answer that
Okay,
question.
yeah.
I love French fries, and I was just eating poutine a couple days ago. I fucking
You're
love
close
poutine.
to Canada up here, so I figured it might be some good poutine around
In
here.
fact, one of the guys over at our warehouse literally has a poutine calendar. It's like a different poutine pictured for each month. So I do love French fries, and I will say I try to go easy on carbs just because I drink, a lot more beer than my doctor says I should drink.
Yeah.
But my favorite potato in the world, there's a place we go to in Ghent, Belgium, every year
Ghent,
on our Belgium
Belgium.
trip.
Yeah.
Yeah, Ghent.
I hear employees go to Belgium after they've been here for a while.
5
Is that
years. Yeah, if you're here for
You're
5
sending
years,
people to Belgium?
we take them on a trip to Belgium.
I'm not getting a part-time job here. Like,
Yeah.
Can I get a part-time job here working like 1 hour a year? That's insane.
It's fun, but there's this restaurant there. I don't know if I'd call it like the finest cuisine, but it's good. I love it.
Mhm.
And basically all they have is ribs and potatoes. I love ribs, and it's kind of an all-you-can-eat type thing. If you get the ribs and potatoes, they just keep bringing you more ribs. But they have this potato. It's a baked potato. It's not that complicated. It's like a baked potato sliced down the middle. It's got a big, huge scoop of like curry butter in it. And like
Curry butter.
yeah, it's off the hook. You just like mix all that in, and it's like
curry
unbelievable.
butter.
I can taste it now. It's like making my mouth water thinking about it. But those are like my favorite potatoes on the planet.
Oh man.
Yeah, Amadeus in Ghent, Belgium.
Amadeus in Ghent. Well,
Yeah.
I mean, I'll be sure to visit it there on my 5th year of part-time.
Sounds good.
And before I know this is the last question. One other one. So I've been going around and talking to a lot of fucking people. I've been drinking a lot of different beer, like in the last 5 or 6 years, and like the thing that about this trip that has blown my mind more than anything is that I was in the back and we were going over all of the the cold ship and the fermentation and this and the other, and I was told that the water here is phenomenal. The tap water here, phenomenal. Like you could just open the drain and just drink it, and it's delicious. And I didn't believe so. I'm hearing this in a brewery tour, in a place that is all about flavor and mouthfeel and all this, and you're talking about the water. So I had to taste it, and my God, it was. I mean, was that something that like you thought about, like whenever you came up here? Was that something that you peeped out? Has it always been kind of good or whatever? I mean, what's the deal?
It was a factor for sure. It wasn't like the only factor because there's other things that intrigued me about Portland. I mean, like living here, we got the bay there, we got skiing, mountain biking, amazing culinary scene. There were breweries popping up. So there's a lot of things that drew me here, but water was one of them. And yeah, we're blessed with an unbelievable water supply. It all comes from Lake Sebago, which is like 15, 20 miles up the road here. And that water supply is so pure that they technically don't even have to do anything to it. Wow. They do a little bit just like for precaution, but not anywhere near what most municipal water suppliers have to do. Yeah. So
it tastes like bottled water.
It does. And they've been protecting that. They've understood like the importance of that water supply to this city literally for over 100 years. They've been protecting that. So we are lucky, and like knock on wood, we can preserve that amazing water supply. We're lucky, and it's like perfectly suited from a mineralogical perspective for the beers we brew.
Man, that is some tasty water. I will tell you that. We do not have that in Pittsburgh. So
we have these little taps, like right when it comes in the building, there's these little taps, and employees will go and they just like grab it like ice cold right after it comes out of the pipe. And it literally, it's it's as good or better than bottled water, and you don't have to use a plastic bottle for it.
Exactly. Oh man, yeah, no, it's delicious, and they get the minerals because like some bottled water is super dry and distilled, and it just doesn't. It's just I mean, but that has a nice little mouthfeel, soft, and it's delicious. Well,
Yeah.
Well, that is our time here. Again, I want to thank you for being on the podcast and for the trip up. If for the folks at home, if you're looking for us, we are the Drinking Partners. You can find us on epicastnetwork.com/partnerspot. You can find us on iTunes, Stitcher, Libsyn, Google Play, and Spotify under Drinking Partners. And you can find us on IG, Twitter, and Facebook at PartnersPod.
Thanks for having me, and thanks for making the trip to Portland.
Yeah, well, it's been dope. But yeah, we'll catch you all later. I mean, I'm sure Ed would say something, more profound and cool at the end of this, but that motherfucker's at work, so catch him on the next episode. All right, folks.